In 1988, a landscape architect working for Lewisham Council was tasked with designing some public realm as part of regeneration works in Deptford High Street. She chose an anchor from Chatham Dockyard and placed it on a plinth at the south end of the High Street to symbolise the town's rich maritime history. A rather cliched monument for a riverside town, perhaps, but over the years, various factors have led to the disappearance of any visible signs that Deptford had once been a prosperous shipbuilding town and the powerhouse of the Royal Navy, since Henry VIII established a royal dockyard here in 1513. Perhaps the only reminder is the ship that tops Deptford Town Hall. The sculpted frieze, which adorns the building's facade, depicts some celebrated men we now know to have been slave traders and privateers. The town's history thus represented is one of shame. In any case, the building itself has long since ceased to represent Deptford. The Royal Dockyard closed in 1869, and since then the site has been used for a foreign cattle market, a war office supplies depot, and for warehousing newsprint imported from Norway for Rupert Murdoch's newspaper empire. But for many years, in between uses, the massive 40-acre walled-in area between the river and the High Street has been inaccessible to the people of Deptford. Presently, it has been closed for over 14 years, and some people still don't know it is there. To add insult to injury, the nearby National Maritime Museum fails to acknowledge the Royal Dockyard in its displays of the period. The museum's extensive collection of Deptford artefacts, including a model of the dockyard, are kept hidden in storage. But in its concentration on royalty and admirals, the museum presents a skewed version of maritime history that excludes the ordinary people who kept the whole edifice of empire running. Greenwich would be nothing without Deptford, but they have made it disappear. For an object like an anchor to appear in Deptford High Street in the late 20th century was indeed significant. A much-loved physical presence in the people's commons. A whole generation of locals grew up with it. The anchor was a landmark and a place to meet, or simply pass on the way to school. It especially became a meeting place for the town's displaced or homeless folk who sat on the plinth to drink together, fully visible to drivers gridlocked on the A2. With alcohol involved, the gatherings often became antisocial. In 2013, the council decided to regenerate the High Street again. Absent landlords who owned property near Deptford Station, which was also being refurbished, welcomed all the gentrification taking place. New buildings were popping up, some being sold off plan in Hong Kong. Property prices were soaring, and those untidy street drinkers were spoiling it all. So they lobbied the council to have the anchor removed. The council duly removed it and made much public outcry. A campaign for its return began. Their meeting place gone, the displaced drinkers hung around the betting shops and also found a home on the benches in the newly paved central square in the middle of the High Street, next to the newly built library and primary school. Angry parents set up a petition to have the benches removed, rather than the drinkers, with little success. The drinkers remain, visible to children, library users and shoppers, and among the commons, but away from the public eye of the larger world, the drivers passing through on the main arterial road into London. 3 years later, the council has refused to put the anchor back, despite an ongoing petition to have it returned. Obfuscating council officers say such an operation will cost 30 grand, although it only requires a JCB and some way of fastening it down. Ironically, the anchor is being stored in the old dockyard site, now owned by Chinese conglomerate Hutchinson Whampoa, who intend to build 3,500 luxury flats, including 3 towers of up to 48 stories, average building heights of 12 stories, and only 14% affordable housing. In the largest ever archaeological survey of a UK dockyard that was completed in 2014 by the commercial arm of the Museum of London, the slipways, docks, mast ponds, basins and buildings were uncovered and then buried, never to be seen again. It seems the council and the developer intend the anchor to eventually take up a place in the new public realm under the shadow of luxury homes, reappearing beside the river just like all the other anchors already dotting the riverside along the Thames path, and far removed from its altogether different context in the midst of the commons on the High Street. Meanwhile, the old dockyard site remains empty, closed off and guarded by dogs, whilst the public space once occupied by the anchor is now used by talk-talk salesmen.